Welcome to the presentation today. My name is Douglas Gabriel. We're going to be talking about a new book that we're putting out called The Mystery of Life Found in Plasma. Now, when I say plasma, I've been doing a survey lately and I ask people, do you know what plasma is? And they all say the same thing, those who are educated, well educated by our system. Let us say our materialistic system. They always say plasma, oh yes, it's the fourth state of matter. It couldn't be further than the truth. The only thing that science has taught us is that plasma is the fourth state of matter. It is not. It is the opposite of matter. It is non-material. It's non-spatial. It's non-gravitational. It's basically the anti to everything that science has taught you. So in this presentation, which we're going to do a number of, we're going to tell you what we know about plasma. Now, first I have to give basically a warning. And this warning is that if you understand plasma, you will no longer be a materialist. So if you wish to continue along the path of materialism, believing that your five senses tell you the only truth that there is, and or that you believe in the religion of scientism, then you will not find this comfortable, though in fact it is necessary on the path of spiritual development. So in terms of what we have given out in our teachings, in over 30 books, 125 articles, probably thousands of free videos for people, we've been trying to instruct you in the path of ascension, because that is what we should be concentrating on now. If you're going to concentrate on what's in the material world now, then you are definitely going to be very sad and depressed and think that you're in the end times, and you may become, as Steiner said, it will seem as if you are hopeless, homeless, and afraid of what's coming from the future. But once you understand plasma, and I know that this is a big thing to say, a big claim up at the front of this series, but if you understand plasma, you will no longer be worried about material things, because plasma is the proof that there is spirit. Recently, we put out a lot of tapes that have been passed around, became very popular out on the internet, called the Telepathy tapes. And it demonstrated that children who are non-verbal autistic children have absolute telepathy, 100%. And that they can't speak, but they can read the minds of anyone in their atmosphere. They can, those that they love, they can actually interact with them in ways that are unimaginable. And they tell us that anytime they want, if they can get into a very quiet, dark space where no one's bothering them, they can go to the hill. And on that hill, they can meet all the great teachers of all the past times and learn anything that they want to learn. Whatever question they have is answered. Their friends are there. Love is there. They're surrounded by light, and they say that it acts like a school. And that in one particular story, one of these children says every night, if they want, they go over and they put on a hat that is named after a book. They put the hat on and they know everything in the book in the morning. And these are children who can't speak, who are nonverbal, but can type and or communicate with letters. So what we're trying to tell you is this. If you have been following this for a long time, and you know that we have a book called The Eternal Ethers, and I probably shouldn't hold this up, but there it is, The Eternal Ethers, A Theory of Everything, then you know that we've explained what happens down here on the earth, what is called anthropogenesis. How did humans come into being? We've also explained in some of our other books what's called cosmogenesis. How did the cosmos, how did the universe come into existence? Now, we have a science in this day and age which has taught us partial theories, or theories that are changing all the time, but partial information about who we are, what life is about. And in fact, I'm going to make the bold statement that I don't believe that scientism, the new science of scientific materialism, can tell you anything about life. Now, there are a lot of other theories out there that I could point at. For instance, Wilhelm Reich's theory of bions. He demonstrated that you can just take some sand off the beach and put it in a special condition where the ethers are very active, and I'll describe the ethers sometime in this presentation. But that bion, the bions inside of it, in other words, there's bions everywhere, and so in sand or anywhere else, you can generate biological life. And this is well known. in plasma generators, what are called magnetohydrodynamic generators, which we're spending trillions of dollars on right now to try to have a sun, which is a plasma, a ball of plasma, on the Earth that can transform one substance into another. That's what the sun does. It transforms helium into hydrogen. But even to say that in scientific terms is complete nonsense when it comes down to spiritual realities. But well, I have to have three different levels of teaching here. The first level is what's called the outer teachings, and we can look at the data and the knowledge that science provides through their limited perceptions of the machines they make to look into the cosmos, or look into the human body, or look into a microscope, or look into manipulating DNA. And what they tell us acts as if it's a completely cohesive system. It is not. And plasma demonstrates that. Now, I cannot in any simple terms tell you all about plasma. I've been studying it since the early 70s when it became somewhat of a popular topic, when Ben Bova wrote his book called Plasma, the Fourth State of Matter. And that term alone is the only thing that has stuck. Did he invent plasma? No. Why did his term stick? Because it's a lie. It goes along with science and doesn't show that science is the story of the king's new clothes. Science has no clothes on, and yet they want to act like they're the king of knowledge. They're not at all. So when Ben Bova wrote this book, Plasma as the Fourth State of Matter, that's nonsense. Let's just go over that. What is the first state of matter? Solid, liquid, and gas. So air is gas. Of course, we know what solid is. We kind of know what solid is. So solid, liquid, and gas. And the fourth state of matter is plasma. And what do they say it is? Well, take a flame and you put a little nanoparticle of salt, even salt, take normal table salt, and put it into an open flame. What will happen? It'll become radiant. It'll explode like a magnesium bomb. It'll just for just a second, it will be here in this realm for just a moment, and it will be so radiant that the inventor of what is called the plasma cosmology or plasma theory, who's in 1879, Sir William Crookes, said it was radiant matter. So if you take a little bit of salt and you put it in a flame and it gets superheated, or you take anything and you get it really superheated, you may turn it into a plasma. And what is it? That's above a gas, and it's going into where? The ethers. Where does it go? Science can't explain this. So when they start explaining plasmas, and when I'm going to explain plasmas to you, you are going to consider that fact that I might be as insane as Robert Temple, who just put out a book called The New Science of the Heavens, who he says the plasma clouds, called the Kordylewski clouds, and the plasmasphere and the exosphere, where plasmas are found in a specific form called high density, complex, dusty plasmoids. And these things are like a little sun, and they're up in our exosphere where it gets to 5 to 10,000 degrees hot. And what happens? Inside of that little ball, they can turn one substance into another substance, exactly what the sun does. And without an explosion, but inside of these plasmoid balls, which is what we've been seeing come down from all the clouds. What have we seen lately? Because we're at a solar maximum, and because we've had incredible proton emissions, fantastic solar flares, very highest levels we've ever seen of aurora borealis, because why? These solar flares and coronal mass ejections, proton emissions, and all the emissions from the sun, what's called solar forcing, comes into the earth and creates the aurora borealis. So when we see it, that means that the solar breath of the sun is really coming in very strongly into the earth. Everything on the sun is plasma. The aurora is plasma. The whole plasmasphere that protects us is plasma. Lightning is plasma. Comet tails are plasma. And 99, and this is debated, so I usually say 99.9, but it's really 99.9 or 99.0001% of the universe that the scientism tells us is out there through their little telescopes and their little spectrography and all the little devices they have, which are what? All tuned to their own 5 limited senses. So all of those devices can ever tell you whether it goes small or large is the limitation of the human 5 senses. And the human 5 senses are very limited. I speak from having been a clairvoyant, born a clairvoyant, and all my life I had capacity to see the 12 senses and the way they work in this realm, and to see into the spiritual world. And that happens to some people, and it's happening to a lot more people now. So when science looks out on the cosmos, they will tell you it's all plasma. And what are they out there looking for? They're looking for life on a planet, aren't they? They're also looking for, how did that plasma get there? How did all those creations get there? And can we spend multi-trillions of dollars in cyclotrons and at CERN and in the Large Hadron Colliders and all the colliders around the world, and the accelerators around the world, and in their other trillions of dollars they've spent on plasma containment so they can have fusion on Earth, a sun on Earth to give them unlimited power. What is that? That's called the lustful desire to be God and think that you can come up with the God particle, the Higgs-Bose particle, or this particle or that particle, or neutrinos, or so on and so forth. And what are they trying to do? They're trying to play God. So when they look out, the scientists, upon the universe, they use 0.001% of what they know about the universe from being on the Earth, and then whatever we believe they tell us that from their satellites and all this exploration into space and looking out with telescopes and looking out with infrared and looking out with electromagnetic telescopes and with there's 5 different types, 7 types of different ways that they look out at the universe and then tell us what it is, right? All of them are based upon human perception. And all of them are based upon mathematics. Now, if anyone had more than 2 or 3 brain cells and a couple dendrites to connect them, a couple axons and dendrites, and they were rubbing them together, then they'd say, well, why are we using a mathematics that only works on the Earth to then project what we believe happened at the beginning of time and then to the end of time and everything in between, and yet we can't ever get the math right? The math is never right. Look where Elon Musk's Tesla Roadster is. It's somewhere headed out towards the asteroid belt. It's never going to get to Mars. The projections of mathematics upon our own solar system are so limited that if that doesn't teach them that they should stop projecting that beyond the heliosphere of the sun, that's the sun, and we're behind it in a cometary tail, in a big long oval that is all plasma, except for what's inside. And what's inside is being cooked up as the only place that, as far as I know, scientism says can support human life. So in all that we see, the scientists, and for some moments I'm a scientist because some of the facts are right, and some of the facts are just absolutely silly nonsense, and it's just preschool kindergartners throwing sand in a sandbox and then naming it after themselves because of their gigantic egos. So when we look at this solar system, that's one thing inside of that plasmasphere, and that we would say that is the birthplace, that is the egg, that is the womb of anthropogenesis, human genesis, anthropogenesis, the creation of humans. Outside of that, we're going to call cosmogenesis. Outside of that, almost all of it is plasma. Now, here's the thing. When you start talking with a scientist about this, especially if they're paid to do so, they will get very violently angry with you because all you have to do is ask them 3 or 4 questions and they can't answer them. And so therefore, their whole science is based upon speculation. And if they don't admit that, then don't have a conversation with them. They won't understand what you are going to understand by the end of this presentation. Out in the cosmos, we find no diaphanous thin surfaces on any planet where there is an atmosphere with a rotating hard core of a substance that creates what we call the Van Allen belts of the Earth. So we have the Earth and it's spinning and it creates a magnetic field. Those magnetic field lines draw in solar plasma, solar breath, and hold it there and basically develop it. And then that is shifted on a thing called the auroral electrojet out of the plasmasphere into and through our own seventh layer of the Earth atmosphere, the exosphere. There's the exosphere, the thermosphere, and then you get into what's called the ionosphere and all these layers down here. So after the thermosphere, which gets to be 10,000 degrees hot in some places in Fahrenheit, you go down, and what you see is, let's just start on the Earth, the lithosphere. Here we're on the Earth, okay? And who knew that without oxygen, the primal substance that life is created on Earth and is brought in here by plasma, without oxygen, we wouldn't have anything to breathe that humans could breathe, and we wouldn't have anything to walk on, because most of the silicates on the Earth are made of oxides. So oxygen and hydrogen are the two components of life. So down here on the lithosphere, now there's 9 layers below the lithosphere. We're on the crust of the Earth. Then there's the troposphere, and then there's the stratosphere, and then there's what we'd probably say at that point, the ionosphere, which is nothing but plasma, cold plasma that reflects the light of the sun so that it doesn't come down here and burn us to death. And I know that sounds a little dramatic, but just read the literature. It will tell you, without ozone, there could be no life, human life on Earth. And so the light of the sun is caught in this other kind of atmosphere. And it also, there's the ozone, even below that, and they'd call that possibly an atmosphere. But remember, that's in the troposphere and just as it's top of the stratosphere, and it floats around to the Earth. So ozone floats all around, goes to the southern pole. We blew holes in that years ago with barium implosion bombs to find out what would happen. Could we collapse? The military did this, and scientists. Can we collapse the ozone to see if it will collapse the Van Allen belts? And when they were asked why they did it, they said, because we can. And if we can do it, then our enemy can do it. So we need countermeasures. These are the stupidest people on the Earth. And so we're still, just recently, my lovely wife told me that just yesterday, they're bragging that the ozone has been healed. No, the ozone goes through cycles. And yes, there's cycles in the winter when it looks as if it's all closed, but the hole's still there, as well as the hole they blew over Hawaii and other things. So what do we do with our atmosphere? And that's what we're going to get to in these talks. We destroy our atmosphere with 10,000 satellites and all the junk out there, all the space stations, all the things we've flown into outer space, all the missiles, all the experiments, all the explosions, all the trips that supposedly we have taken into space. Every one of those pokes a hole in the ozone and pokes a hole in the atmospheres, depending on, they say they go through, don't worry, we go through the North Pole. Well, that's the worst place they could go through, okay? So plasma, the second you get out of the exosphere of the Earth, which is the 7th layer of heaven of the Earth's 7 heavenly layers, atmospheres. Did I go through all of them? Anyway, it goes through, we're down here. You go up, what happens? It gets really super cold. Then it gets really hot. Then it gets really cold. Then it gets super, super, super hot. And in between, it gets so reflective that the sun rays, half of them are bounced off, and we don't get any of the poisonous rays that would kill us. This is what happens when you ascend to heaven, okay? So when you ascend to meet the plasma beings, now those beings, are they organic or inorganic? I can't tell you that. I believe that they're the Merkabah. They're the chariot of the gods, the chariot of the thrones, the willpower of the first rank of the hierarchy. But that's not the point. The point is that scientists will tell you they have a unified system between cosmogenesis and anthropogenesis. That is the biggest lie you've ever been told in your whole life. That is the lie of materialism. That is the lie that keeps you bound to thinking that you are not an immortal being. Some of these beings I'm going to describe in these presentations seem as if they are immortal as long as they are in a magnetic field with other plasma, creating cells and plasmoids and what I described before, dusty, complex plasmoid balls, which drop down. We've seen thousands of them, have we not? If you have been under a rock somewhere, maybe you haven't heard that there have been literally thousands, I've seen them myself, I've spent hours watching them, of films on people's phones, and those are the only ones that I usually trust. And even then, those are very good fake ones now on the internet. Thousands of light orbs dropping out of the clouds, all colors dropping out of the cloud. Blue ones rising from the earth just before an earthquake. Blue and green ones rising from active volcanoes. We now have more earthquakes than ever because we're at a solar maximum. We now have more volcanoes going off than in my lifetime, any other time in my lifetime. And then over the oceans, like the ones in New Jersey, they were doing experiments in plasma. So they attracted plasma balls from above and from below. Plasmas go through physical matter. They can create in the laboratory a plasma ball that they can send through any thickness of metal that they experiment with. Easy to create. You can buy a gun right now that will shoot a little plasma ball. You can get one that will do your face and your skin. You can get them that'll help stop pain. You can get plasma light photo medicine, what do they call it? Breakthrough medicine on your teeth where they regrow your teeth. Your teeth are gone. They pull it. They regrow a new tooth. They can fix your eyes. They know that now plasma is in the head. They're not sure how that happens. They know plasma is created in the blood, and they know how that happens because they have devices now called plasmatic magnetohydrodynamic hearts, a fake human heart based upon the very technology I'm telling you about, which for a long time was secret. And only now, because they started putting it into medicine, once they get it to medicine, that means they've weaponized it as far as they can. That's what that means. That's what they did with atomic energy. That's what they did with graphene oxide. That's what they did with every single invention. Weaponize it first, and then try to sell it to the public by creating miracle medical treatments, by the way, that are not tested, zero longitudinal tests on any of these things I'm telling you about. There is plasma regeneration. I've known this since the time that I can't even remember. We used to tell people, oh, you have AIDS? Go to France, get your blood taken out. They put it in this container. They hit it with ozone. They put it back with ozone as a plasma. They put it back into your blood. By golly, they can't find any AIDS in your body for years. Now, there was a way to do that where they did it like kidney treatment, kidney dialysis, where they take all your blood out. I know this has happened to me, the kidney treatment. They take all the blood out, they hit it with something, they put it back in. Bingo, you have no more viruses. In other words, dead cell material. You have no more bacteria, bad bacteria, because it cleans it. You can clean water with plasma. The most powerful ozone is a plasma. So sometimes I may not define that. When you get a new hot tub and you get a really nice one, it comes with an ozonator. It comes with an ozone cleaner for the water. Same with your swimming pool. Same with, you can buy one to do your water at home. Do all those things work? Well, I think they might, but here's the deal. Who knows? It's just like they always do. Let's experiment on humans. And if there's lawsuits down the pike, then we will do something about it. So plasma right now, since 1950, well, it was discovered and invented in the laboratory in 1879. As I said, the very year that the Archangel Michael came to his regency as the time spirit. Who is Archangel Michael? The Archangel of the Sun, the countenance of Christ. So what is plasma? You're not going to believe some of these things I'm telling you. That's why I'm trying to gently break you into this, because I had studied it years ago and I thought I'd kept up on it. But then when I recently did a deep dive, started 6 months ago to do this book, because all these orbs were coming down, and I kept saying to everybody, you haven't seen ball lightning? What is your problem? Science will tell you there is no ball lightning, though they created it in a laboratory. Go figure. Go figure. Trillions of dollars are being spent on plasma containment. That's ball lightning. And they will call it lightning, their lightning machine, their lightning generator. So I can't even list to you all the weapons. Let's just say I'm going to leave that till later. There's lots of weapons. Let's talk about the spiritual nature of this. Why does science want to get back to the moment of creation? Because they believe there was a big bang and that everything was expanding out. Now they've changed their mind, but they still teach the Big Bang. It's not the Big Bang. It's Big Bang plus inflation. Inflation means that when they discovered that everything wasn't moving from a central point outward, because then they would all be the oldest things would be towards the center. So they found the center, what we see as the super galaxy, right? And by the way, our own local, what they call it, sub-super galaxy, has a bubble around it, a 10,000 degree bubble. Our own helioscope has a 10,000 degree bubble. We have an atmosphere. Steiner was the first one to point that out, that the atmosphere, he said that the Earth has around it a heat shield that is equivalent to what can happen both on the surface of the sun and in solar flares. Now, surface of the sun is between 5 to 10,000. Solar flare can be 10 million. Aha, a lightning bolt on the Earth can be 5 million, 2 to 5 million or so. Okay, so you get 10 lightning bolts. What happens? You get a plasma ball appears. And when the big lightning is gone, what happens? A plasma ball starts rolling around, rolls up all the loose electricity. And by the way, the clouds don't rub together in the electrostatic energy to create lightning. That's the stupidest thing anyone could ever think of. When do you see sparks jump off of you when you touch another person? When it's a dry day and you've rubbed your feet against something that there was a lot of friction. Clouds are wet. They can't create friction. That's stupid. Electricity is plasma. Every time there's an electrical bolt of anything, a filament of electricity, it turns at one point, comes back on itself down, and now it has a double helix, just like what? The DNA, the RNA. This is in every plasmoid ball does this. Every filament does this. Every every cord you have in your house is doing this from your plug in your wall. Okay, all the cords you see, all that spider web, all doing this. And the silly scientists have never asked this question. What is electricity? No one can explain that. Where does it come from? How come there's an infinite amount of it if you say it only happens when a molecule, an atom breaks into an ion and a proton? And so you got these little electrons, ions, electrons and protons. Oh, and electrons. Now we create a sinkhole of magnetism by spinning copper around something that's metal or something magnetized. What happens? You suck in electrons, don't you? All electricity is just a whole bunch of happy electrons. No, they're dying electrons being put into a man-made electrical field. It's a horrible, evil thing. It happens naturally. It happens with plasma naturally. Plasma is the electrical force of the universe. Down here on Earth, we have form. We have life. We have the four ethers down here active. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see if I can get that right. And the Akashic ether, which they now are saying plasma is the Akashic ether. The Akashic ether is like 0 point energy or vacuum energy, and all around you, the empty space is remembering everything that ever happened. That's what the Akashic ether does. Now, plasma without the Akashic ether can't create an atmosphere. It creates all that nebulous stuff out there where we can't find any life. Oh, they project there's life out there because they see it down here. They don't even know what they're looking at. They're looking into a mirror, according to Rudolf Steiner. And Rudolf Steiner was the first to predict that they would finally find out that the shape of the universe is limited. It is not infinite, and it would be the shape of a dodecahedron. That is exactly what their 7 types of telescopes, 7 types of telescopes tell us the whole universe is a dodecahedron. We're here in the middle. We go out to the edge, and as soon as we do, bingo, bango, we appear back in the middle again. Go read it, people. It's called the trumpet. It's called the horn. It's called they give it all these names. They change it every year. But the point is, it expands out to a point and immediately, magically, because it's in a continuum, bounces back to the middle again. Well, that is exactly what plasma and the etheric formative forces do. Plasma is the electrical force. Etheric formative forces help create human life down in an atmosphere that has 7 layers above it just to protect it. And we're in the thinnest practically of those layers. And it's the perfect temperature for us. And the sun does its job with plasma, and the moon does its job to create water. And Steiner explains this. Now, When we're talking about plasma, are we talking about beings? No, we're talking about their vehicles, what's called the Merkaba, the chariot, the Ophanim, it's called. It's called what God uses as a vehicle to come into this realm. Well, first off, this realm was created for only one purpose. And I'm sorry to have to disappoint the scientists. It was to create humans because we are the perfect exact image of the whole universe. We haven't turned up into a ball yet. We'll do that in the future, but we will be a sphere. And this sphere will have the same exact dynamics as the Earth. And the Earth and our ball of the human is the same dynamic of the what scientists call the atom, which they tell you they took a picture of the atom. That's a lie. Bull. Nonsense. They're taking picture of frozen material, period. They are not taking pictures of electrons, protons, or any of their magical neutrons. By the way, they tried to capture one the other day and it blew up their, I predicted this. They blew up at CERN one of the most expensive devices ever created trying to capture neutrons. Also, they did it under the ocean. We had a neutron explosion in May of 2024 with a huge proton emission to the South Pole that has created a new plasma sphere inside of the Van Allen belts. We are in a new age, folks, and that's the reason I'm allowed to talk about this. I've known about this. I've read Etheric Formative Forces for many decades. But I couldn't speak about it. Now I can speak about it because they've gone too far, and we're calling for a moratorium on plasma experimentation because they've made the weapons first. The medical, they're going to hurt a lot of people with that, and they're making medicine with it. So we can explain how plasma is in the human body. That's in the book, and all these things we're talking about are in the book. But the point is, we have to change our minds. If you don't change your mind, you can't hold these thoughts. So I'll just give you that thought again. They can create a plasma ball so easy. Matter of fact, that plasma ball has a little needle on it, and it can create a ball as big as they want. They can grow it. They can program it with microwave diffuse programming, templating, like they do with graphene oxide, send it out as far as they want on an invisible filament, which is basically a thread of electricity that creates its own magnetic field because it starts twisting helically. And they have a magnetic field and they can project that. And when they push the button, it can turn into whatever they want. They're using this instead of fireworks now. So if you haven't noticed this, the best fireworks in the world are all plasma generated. They're sending out filaments that explode the ions in the air and can change them colors because they're templated, they're programmed. They can do this with an airplane. All the jets now have plasma emitters on them. So as decoys, they send out plasma balls that turn into the exact shape of that fighter, but even hotter. So the missiles go after the decoy and the fighter goes off. That's what they were experimenting with in New Jersey. But they were also experimenting with plasma drones to protect military facilities. That's why around the whole world, all U.S. military facilities had light orbs, light balls come down out of the clouds to tell them to stop this. You see, I've been working with Trevor Constable. I worked with him back in the 70s, early 70s, and Galen Hieronymus and Rick Mansell and the whole group of them near LA. And we'd go out onto the high Sierras, plateau where it's desert near the electrical lines, and we would use a cloud buster because that's what Hieronymus was into, which was a Wilhelm Reich orgone box with lead pipes out of it and water running through it to create clouds or disperse clouds. Been doing this has been happening forever. So if you think geoengineering, the way they do it, sending up the nanoparticles which go into the atmosphere and ruin the atmosphere, come to the earth, ruin the earth. No, you can do it energetically. And then we'd use high technical infrared cameras. And we would film these critters all the time. We called them warmth critters. And they acted just like they were alive. The second you created this, instead of a cloud, they would appear. The cloud would start to form, they would appear. Okay, and then they'd start running around, having babies, getting bigger, getting less, exploding each other, leaving long trails like a comet trail of probably what? Oxygen and water, right? That's what they do. And then almost universally, they go over to the electric wires And by the way, they're invisible to your sight, but they're not invisible to infrared sight. That's the reason the military and everyone knew what was going on in New Jersey and everywhere else. So they run down the wires. And what would happen is if they sat on the wire and used their more electrostatic instead of electromagnetic, say they're natural electrostatic, natural electromagnetic, natural electrogravitational. That's the reason they can fly up and down, everything. Fly. No one's ever caught one. We've never caught one naturally. They can't be caught. Why? Because they're not matter. They're technically not even in space. They use the ethers to appear in space, to manifest the proto-material of oxygen from the sun and water from the moon and hydrogen peroxide, and helium from the sun is turned into oxygen. Hydrogen that is controlled by the moon is turned into water. And these two substances come together and it creates the ability for biological life. So are they biological life? Some would say that they're angels, they're gods. We've had all throughout religious times recordings of the saints and everyone who is a very high being. Balls of lightning come and sit next to them, or come through the window. Lightning comes and strikes somebody and kills them, but not the saint. And then they got a communication from it. These balls have come and they've announced things. They've been the angels' messengers. They have been what? Christ went where? Up into the clouds. Where did Enoch go? Up into the clouds. Melchizedek, up into the clouds. Where did Elijah go? Well, he got on his chariot and he went up into the clouds. Where did Ezekiel go? Oh, that's right. He gave the best explanation of a plasmosphere, what's called a sphere mac. They make these in the laboratory. A sphere mac is a plasmoid, comes out of this little ejection. It's in a ball that's in a vacuum and is contained by a magnetic field, and it starts to do stuff. And what does it do? First thing it does, sends out one line of electricity, starts to turn it, spins back on itself and creates the double, starts to twist itself until it wraps into a torus, a donut, continues to take the filaments and wraps them around it. What is that? That's what we do to create what? Electricity. We take something solid magnetic of a certain substance, wrap it with copper, and spin it. Well, that's what happens in the plasmoid. And then what happens? They take in from the atmosphere, from meteorites, particularly chrondites, they take in C60, all kinds of carbon. They take in all kinds of the preliminary materials. They're not coming from stars. Nothing's going to get here from a star. It comes from the asteroid belt. Remember, the asteroid belt was a planet that had almost completely formed. It has every form of element in it. Okay, where did that come from? That was before we had a heliosphere. And these things were kicked out of the sun. So as the sun is sucking, because the sun has life ether, it sucks. Does plasma suck? No. That's why no life is created where there's plasma. And by the way, plasma can be visible and glowing, hot as can be, or cold. So when they say dark matter, here's what they're really saying. Plasma in its non-glowing state, particularly working with protons and electrons. That's it, folks. The whole universe is created by nothing but male and female. Male electrons, female protons. They have bigger mass. They draw to themselves. They suck in. These zoom around. Yeah, and that's basically what happens with humans. So anyway, if they get together, something has to get them together. And then they have to start to work to direct the electrons. And then the protons have to work to create a sheath, a filament for them. And then what happens? Then they start to curl and they start to create what we know as suns. Suns would be created because that's just a gigantic plasma ball. I mean, we're inside of the plasma sphere of the sun. We are inside of a plasmoid. Okay? So what is happening here is we are being incubated. And we're being incubated by the same forces that created the cosmos, but you don't see any life. Because why? We're the only life that we know of. So you can't use the 0.001% mathematical logic of earthbound silly thinking to try to apply to the universe. So folks, matter is not real. So materialism ends with the understanding of plasma. Who understands plasma? Oh, they outlawed the plasma cosmology a long, long time ago, and they kept it secret for a long time. As far as I know, I thought I was the only person talking about magnetohydrodynamic generators, which are plasma generators, and that there is one in your human heart. There's a different type in your gut, there's a different type in your head, but I've explained it in the book and explained it in all of our books. So I started giving out these secrets a long time ago, but Steiner gives the ultimate secrets, which I put in this book. It tells you exactly how the tree of life works. Because without the tree of life mechanism of the earth, in other words, if the earth is a monad, an atom, and it has a complete system, and where does it get its system? Well, it gets it from the sun. The earth is going to become a sun. It will become a plasma ball in the future, but not now, because we are still down here in the etheric formative forces. Now, Akasha is an etheric formative forces. It's everywhere. It's the vessel of all creation. It is that substance they call ether, the cosmic ether. But there's also two other ethers that come from, there's warmth ether, light ether, sound ether, life ether. These two, warmth and light, ray out, and they are the tree of life. I mean, the tree of knowledge. We get that. And what did we do with it? Oh, well, what did we do with fire? What did we do with light? Every bad thing a human can do with it, of course. So that's why the tree of life was taken from us, because if we understood what's called sound ether or chemical ether, it's also called valence ether, it's also called number ether, it's called the harmony of the spheres. So if you understood the way that every single element, electron, proton, interacted, you'd understand the chemical ether. But chemical ether isn't going to happen out in space. It only happens by a certain condition, which we're going to talk about, called stars 3, stars 2, stars 1, which gave us water, which gave us basically substance, warmth, and then it gave us air, then it gave us water, then it gave us the earth that we stand on. So we're going to talk about that. That's the etheric formative forces. But you have to separate plasma, which is electronic. It's an electronic force that causes a gravity field. In other words, it causes the structure for life to be able to be created, but it does not create life. Life is created by the ethers. Now, the two ethers called sound ether or chemical ether and life ether, which is also called the word, in other words, form, in other words, all religions tell you the same thing. All creation, instead of having CERN, they should just read the scriptures. All creation came from the word. It came from a being who spoke a thought, and speaking the thought created the physical manifestation, but the being who did it was not really manifest. So when we look out on plasma, you got to understand, they will tell you anywhere from 65 to 85 to 95% of the plasma that we do see, which is 95% of everything we see, is dark matter. Dark matter is not matter. You see, the first thing they do is they put a limitation on it. Instead of telling you to open your mind, you're going to have to, if you want to understand cosmogenesis. And if you truly want to understand anthropogenesis, you have to open your mind and understand that it came from cosmogenesis. So we explain what the tree of life is. The tree of life is what created oxygen. And without oxygen, nothing would happen, okay? Nothing. O2. Ozone is O2. Oxygen is O3. Without that, and in lightning bolts, what do you get? You get O3. What happens when your white blood cells goes to kill a pathogen? You get ozone. You get hydrogen peroxide, water, which created water, and then you get a byproduct of ozone, which is generally poisonous, but it will kill anything poisonous that comes in your bloodstream. That means the ozone in our atmosphere gives us the foundation to have life, and the ozone in our body is a reflection of that and is, in fact, the defense system that we have to fight those things that are anti-life. So yes, when we saw all those globes descend from the clouds, those weren't happy light globes. Those weren't happy little pixies, little angels that were happy to come down here to clean up human mess, because that's what they were doing. All electricity creates what's called dirty electricity. And if you're in a house that's made with square corners, you created orgone energy. And orgone energy, if it doesn't have an outflow through water, will build up and kill you. So I'm talking about things that create not only life, but they create death. And that's the reason we have never had access to the tree of life before. But we now have access. We have sent particles. Let me explain. Chemicals, chemtrails have always been filled with the smallest particle they could because they knew that it would rise. And they wanted to, through radio transmissions, they wanted to see what would happen with, they started off to begin with every type of ash that they could, coal ash. Then they went to salts. Then they went to nanoparticles, aluminum particularly. And now they use a dozen different types of nanoparticles of higher metals because why? They transform when they go through cold or heat. And when they hit the thermosphere, what do you think? If you take a little speck of salt and put it in not a very hot flame, and it bursts into radiance, what do you think is going to happen when you take endless tons of nanoparticles that are metal that rise? Some sink, some rise. Actually, and some stay right in the middle. That's what you're seeing in the middle. That's to seed the clouds. The ones that come down are to kill agriculture. The ones that go up are to kill humans. So they're experimenting. So they used Whistler waves, and they use all kinds of very low frequencies. They used high frequencies. They used HARP, extremely low frequencies. They used every type of frequency to bounce it off the ionosphere, try to bounce it into the thermosphere and see if they could explode it so they could create man-made life. Have you ever heard this before? No. Have they been doing it? For a long time. So it's about time that we came out and taught people to use their consciousness to antidote what's going on. So Rudolf Steiner indicated that we have already reached the lowest point of entropy. And if you want to go with scientism, you'd say we started as a cosmic nebula that is winding down to entropic death. Ask any scientist, they'll tell you that. Because why? They believe in the Big Bang. But the Big Bang had to have inflation and stars 3, 2, and 1 added before they could get to the fact that we actually have the fact that below the Earth we create water, above the Earth we create water, below the Earth we create and digest oxygen. We create oxygen and digest because most of the things below the Earth are made of oxides. Rudolf Steiner tells us, and that's where I get all of this information. It's just that he was far, far more than 100 years beyond his time. But now that 100 years have passed, we can reveal these things. So if you want to understand what I'm talking about, you can read the book that we've produced called The Mystery of Life Found in Plasma, or you can go back to The Eternal Ethers or any of our books, because we describe this particularly from the point of view of the human being, psychologically, physically, mentally, spiritually. Why? Because that's what we're working with. Everything in the human being is in the cosmos. So are we simply created because our mothers and fathers spun around like a cosmic nebula and then we're just headed towards entropic death and that's all there is? That is so unimaginative. That is so ridiculous. It basically shows that if you're only perceiving with 5 senses, that you must become a scientific nihilist. You would have to. It would be the only logical choice for you. But if you for once actually looked at a growing plant, an animal, a human, or anything that has life, because science does not understand anything about life. As a matter of fact, at the moment that the 5 billion sperm are attacking the ovum of the woman, the sperm of the man, the ovum only lets in, usually, 1 sperm. And how did the sperm get there? Oh, scientists will tell you it's the flagellas at the end of the sperm. Do you understand that when the first blast happens, when the first sperm enters, the flagella of that sperm drops and all the other sperm's flagellas die? And the ovum explodes with light? I'm basically describing a plasmoid. And then what's the first thing that happens? It congeals and starts to make a second layer. These second layers of plasmoids are the magic substances that create anything that is headed towards life. So proto-life out there that we see in the universe is basically embryology, Rudolf Steiner said. So if we studied embryology, we don't need to go out there to study the cosmos. We need to study in here. And if we did, and if we studied that moment, we would understand plasma. Now, there are so many secrets to plasma that I don't know how many of these we'll have to do. But I'm going to tell you one right now. First off, in the human body, enzymes are eternal. Go look it up if you don't believe me. They can do 1 trillion interactions with 1 trillion different cells in 1 second. And how do they do that? Well, they'll tell you it's form. That the enzyme is this special little form, and that in the form is a key. And when the key gets near one of the things it wants to affect, it puts the key in and turns the key. And then the enzyme doesn't lose any energy. It acts as a catalyst. It stimulates all life. And without them, we wouldn't exist. One could actually say we are in a symbiotic relationship with enzymes. And when we die, the enzymes continue if they're in a biological state. Same is true for stem cells, epithelial cells. Same is true for plasma cells. Now, they named plasma in the blood. You know, there's white blood cells, red blood cells, plasma, and platelets, right? Well, they named plasma because they didn't understand it. So they named it after something they didn't understand. But it so happens that they must have had an intuition, because there really is plasma in your blood. Rudolf Steiner says that lightning in nature has its equivalent in plasma in your blood. And after the lightning strikes your blood, in other words, once perception comes into your blood, the echo of it is thunder in nature and thought in your mind. So your blood is lightning and your thought is thunder. And that's just one analogy that he gives. The highest spiritual beings are involved in climate, because without climate, there'd be no life. Let's remember, we're watching a living being every time you look up into the clouds. That's the reason, literally, almost every Aboriginal faith believed in who? The sky god or goddess. Or usually the mother was the earth and the sky god. Whether you call it Cronus, Uranus, Zeus, it doesn't matter. Whether you call it the Thunderbird, it doesn't matter. Look in all religions, you'll find. In all religions, everything I'm telling you can be substantiated. And we put it in the book, by the way. And particularly the Christian version of it, because there's so many Christians that we are teaching through this. So essentially what we're talking about is the tree of life. And Rudolf Steiner says that the human body is the tree of life. So inside of your plasma are what are called long-lived plasma cells. Sometimes they're called long-lived plasma germ cells, or just plasma germ cells. Of course, anytime science doesn't understand something, they put a lot of names on it to confuse everyone trying to understand it, because they want to discover it themselves and put their name on it. So imagine this. When you were in your mother's womb and she was helping you create the types of blood that you have, and your heart was yet to beat. Your heart did not beat. The heart is not beating. The blood is pulsing. And what drives the blood? Far infrared rays of the sun drives the blood. That's now been proven. As well as the life ether, if you understand ethers, is sucking the blood out to the smallest corpuscles so that every single cell is given its oxygen, nutrient, and carbon dioxide and poisons are taken away. This is a miraculous system that we have, this body. And so if you actually just simply focused on it, that's all you'd need. Imagine in your mother's womb, you were creating plasma germ cells, let's call them. And think of the germ I just described, when that's what they call this, the ovum and the sperm are called germ cells, right? And they're perfect your whole life. So if you, all of your degrading ends of your DNA, what are they called? As they degrade, that's why you grow old. Well, guess what? Your ovum and your sperm, if you still have any ovum, are still 100% new, young, and eternal. And in your blood are blood plasma germ cells that will be there your entire life. That's why they want you to give blood, so you lose these. You don't recreate them. And inside of them are the magic ingredients that create cosmic helium into oxygen, cosmic hydrogen into water. So inside of those cells, carried all your life, are hydrogen peroxide and ozone that are poisonous to your body. But in the exact right moment, they saved your life. That's how wise the human body is. So Rudolf Steiner pointed all these things out earlier, but until I started writing this book, I didn't put them all in one place and say, oh my goodness, he addressed this so many times. It's absolutely ridiculous. So some who are anthroposophists who follow what we do may want to take an exception to this. So I'm going to read you a very short quote of Rudolf Steiner. He says, from GA 214, modern humanity looks at the beginning of the earth and how it was formed from a primal plasma in space, how life, man, and the world of ideas arose out of this primal matter. I'm going to read it again faster. Modern humanity looks at the beginning of the earth, how it was formed from a primal plasma in space, how life, man, and the world of ideas arose out of this primal matter. He calls it plasma. So if you, for 1 second, don't believe that Rudolf Steiner has already taught this, because why? He already predicted it. It's called, when man takes plasma and turns it into an evil force, it's called the third force. It's anti-gravitational. He already has. And in the book, we point out the weapons that have already been created. And those things you see flying around, those are anti-gravitational, because what they're doing is they're manipulating man-made plasma. Well, when you manipulate man-made plasma, you call down the good plasma that comes down to try to antidote it. It's like when you put a poison in your body, what happens? You're in a symbiotic relationship with your biome, with the living good bacteria in your body comes and fights with the bad bacteria. That always happens in your blood system. It happens throughout your whole body. Your body is astoundingly, incredibly intelligent, and it's filled with love. Rudolf Steiner said that if you are able to look out upon the cosmos, all you would see is complete and absolute love. What is it when an electron and a proton join together, start to spin together, twist together, and make electricity? What is it when a man and a woman come together, twist together, become one, and they create a baby? It's the same thing. Now, what do we do with the tree of life in modern times? 26 million abortions? What do we do with the tree of life? We're still killing people in wars. We turn it into medicines that kill instead of help us. We take plasmas and turn it into weapons first. That's what we've done with all innovation in the modern world. And so what we're trying to say is the time has come to raise your consciousness to be able to embody the fact that you are a plasmic being. You're not quite a plasmoid yet, because you can't do this consciously, or you don't do it automatically. Plasmoids, they create for us our water and our air. Don't you think we should thank them? Don't you think we should thank the sun for the solar breath without which we would have no life? Or the warmth, the light, the sound, the life, the akasha that comes off the sun? It's in the rays. Now, the sun is a plasma. It's an electromagnetic white hole, according to Rudolf Steiner. But because it has life ether in it, it sucks. So the sun is sucking. When we see a gigantic coronal hole, what do we see inside? Nothing. Pure, blacker than black darkness. What we're supposed to be seeing, the biggest fire we can possibly imagine, it is not there. No, the sun is not what we think. The earth is not what scientists tell you. It's not that at all. You need to put yourself into basically almost a it's called a religious mode because relinkio means to relink. You need to relink with the cosmos where you came from and realize how unique you are, because you are going to become a cosmic ruler in the future. But if you don't know these things, and if you can't control them in your own body, how do you think you're going to be given any dominance or any control? Basically being raised up to your inheritance of having your own cosmos. Because why? It's very simple to do. These are automatic processes, but they are not, and none of them are stimulated out of the physical world. Every sound ether, chemical ether, valence reaction between anything that is either atomic or plasmic, it does not matter. That activity is in fact the activity of the spirit. The activity of life ether that then comes in and takes that forming and turns it into life. That's the life ether. That's the word, the logos. That's Vak speaking. That there's 1,000 names for this from the ancients. So as we're going along in this presentation, we just want you to understand that you're going to be presented with things that you've never heard before. And please feel free to go and study them. We're going to continue to walk through this beautiful primrose garden, and we're going to continue to show you that anything that we're talking about in space is not some imaginary Luciferic trip out to the Kordylowski clouds where you think that that's where God lives. No, that's not right. That is simply a vehicle for the higher hierarchy. God is above them. And so we're going to walk through this both with the religious, social, economic, spiritual weapons, the psychology of it, the whole thing. We're going to talk about the whole thing because we're basically going to make sure that some of the content that is not in the book, as well as the content that's in the book, will be given in these presentations. And so I'm terribly excited about this. I cannot tell you that this is the next step. And I can only speak it now since May of 2024, when the proton bombardment of the Earth caused a mutation in some human beings that are now demonstrating that. So look all around you and you will see that those who were spiritual are now taking advanced steps, and those who are not are now taking a step backwards. And we see that everywhere geopolitically. We see that in the skies, and we need to be prepared because, in fact, in the future, we need to be prepared so that we have the proper resonance to accept what those in the future, those higher beings, are bringing to us. And if we have the proper resonance, we too can be given the responsibility to work with these plasmic forces. Welcome to the show today. We're going to be talking about a new book that has just come out on Amazon. It's one of our 24 books you can find on Amazon. It's called The Etherization of the Blood. These are the secrets of Ascension. And we've given them to you before from different points of view, but today we're going to talk about it from the perspective that we put it in this book, which is essentially, if you have done your preparation, if you have reached the stage of enlightenment, in my opinion, that means you know you're immortal, which is not all that hard to do, then you're ready for the stages of initiation. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the ethers, and we're going to talk about plasma, and we're going to talk about the process of ascension.